Would you mind standing to your feet and welcoming my dear friend as he comes to deliver the word of the Lord this morning, Shane Willard.
Okay. You be seated. Oh, it's good to be here with you. If you'd like to follow along in actual Bible, Philippians chapter 2, we're going to get there in just a second. It's so good to be back here with my friend and with you guys. 13 years we've been doing this. 13 years. And so we've already booked in for next year, so he hasn't found me boring yet, which is good. And we'll just keep going. If you're new to this, when you walk out today, you're going to see a table of resources there. CDs, DVDs, USBs, direct downloads. If you wonder why we carry that around with us, it's because we make a lot of money from it. And the reason we do that is because we live with the conviction we're not simply called to go to heaven when we die. That we are called to say yes to the infinite possibilities that Jesus has for our life here now today to make a difference. And so our main mission for us is to take care of the poor and the afflicted. And so we give 100% of the profit we'll make from that. We're going to give to mentally handicapped children in China. The organization that takes care of them, feeds, clothes, shelters, educates them. We also get girls out of prostitution and things like that in Cape Town. But we don't just do that. We get them off drugs, which that's the big thing. And then we get them high school educated and job trained so we can try to break the cycle of poverty there. And so it does us no good to play the moral police and be like, oh, you need to, well, yeah, we need options. And so that's what we do. The only thing, if you could do me a favor though, if you know I'm not getting anything or I've already got something, I'll see you next time. That's great. I will see you next time. If you know before I leave, I'm going to stop by and get something. If you could do me a favor, if you could buy first and chat second, that would be awesome. And the reason is because I've got to pack that up, and I've got 2 appointments this afternoon, and then I've got to fly. So I got to get to Detroit Airport and fly. So the quicker we could do that, the better. I'd like to leave that open for only about 10 minutes or so after service before I start packing it down, so that we could do that. If you could do that for me, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. I am Shane Willard. I am prematurely gray. And here's the thing. Here's the thing. Like this was a few years ago. I was 37, and this is hand on heart the truth. Pastor Richard and I had the poor waitress at Chili's debating within herself which one of us was the older brother, and yes, and the thing is, he's old enough to be my dad theoretically if he was a very promiscuous teenager, but it's unfortunate. The truth is that it did help my career. It did. Being prematurely gray allowed people to take me more serious when I was younger. It did horrors for my love life, though. I've been asked out by more women my mother's age than you could possibly imagine. But nonetheless, here we are now. So I want to talk to you about the cross and resurrection. We've been talking about that all weekend, but not the cross and resurrection as a doctrine, like, oh, we believe in that. I think the cross and resurrection should be more profound than that. The cross and resurrection should not be something we believe in. The cross and resurrection should be an event that fundamentally changes the way we see our whole world, right? Like, it should go past mere belief. It should be something that changes the way we see everything. And so I want to talk to you about that part. Because Christianity in the first century was not a way to go to heaven when you died. Christianity in the first century was a new way to be in the world. It was about how a group of people could interact with their world in a different way. It was given a new vision for that. There's this guy named Paul, and he's chained to a wall. He is being tortured systemically under the authority of a guy named Nero. To be a Christian in the first century was a capital crime. They would kill you by sticking a stick up your butt, and they would impale you with it, and then set you on fire to keep their garden alight, right? So if you're a masochist, you can Google pictures of that. If you ever have had the thought, oh, this world's getting so crazy, no, that was crazy. And they did crazy stuff. So Paul is being tortured by this guy. Eventually he dies in 63 AD or so at the hands of this guy, and he's writing back to the Philippian church because there was no prison. In the first century, you didn't go to prison if you were a criminal. They just beat you, right? There was no such thing as a criminal's prison in Rome. If you were in prison in Rome in the first century, you're on death row. You're considered an enemy of Caesar. And actually, if you were a Christian, the charge was atheism, and that's true. Because they believed that Caesar was God, and if you're claiming to have another God that Caesar hasn't approved of, then that's actually atheism. So Trajan would kill people he would execute Christians on the charge of atheism. And so Paul is facing this. And the only way he's going to get out of it is deny Christ. And he's not going to do that. And so they didn't feed you if you were a prisoner. They didn't do any of that, because why? You're going to die anyway. And so you had to depend on other people. And at the time of writing, the Philippian church were evidently the only group of people who sent someone to feed him. And the guy's name was Epaphroditus. And he's essentially writing a letter back to this group of people to say thank you, and to try to inspire them, and that's the context of the letter. And it's in that context he says some really inspiring things, like, if God started it, he'll complete it. Which is not a bullet point for a pamphlet. It's written by a guy chained to a wall who's getting hope back stirred up in his heart in the middle of that hardship. He says, this will turn out for my deliverance. Stand together against your enemies, for what might look like your destruction is actually your salvation. Hey, with God all things are possible. This guy is inspiring. In chapter 2, he switches gears and he talks about how we should interact with each other in our world. And remember, he's writing to a group of people where it's illegal. You got to really protect one another. This was an early writing, and I think it's still applicable today. And he says this line that gets quoted a lot. He says, "Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. And we just quote it without looking at the very next verse. He actually gives some thoughts on what it looks like to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, which for Paul was not a way to go to heaven when you die. Working out your own salvation with fear and trembling was working out the lifestyle that we're talking about, how Christians are supposed to interact with our world. And here was the first thought. This is the immediate thought afterwards. And I want to spend the whole morning talking about this first thought, about what it looks like to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. Here it is. Do all things without grumbling or disputing. Well, let's just stop right there. This might be the shortest sermon you've ever heard. Would you agree with me that that's enough thought for the week? That's enough challenge for the week, right? Let's give that its 30 seconds of due. How seriously do we take the scriptures? And how have we done with that? Do all things without grumbling or disputing. How have we done with that today? This week? This month? Are Christians really known worldwide for being the group of people who don't argue amongst themselves? Actually, in an earlier letter in Romans, he says, never, ever, ever quarrel over a disputable matter. And then he calls all things disputable. The principle is don't quarrel. He says, unless it's Jesus is the Christ, he was crucified, the resurrection is true, don't quarrel. In a matter of fact, he says in Romans 14:23, he says, whatever faith you've come to in Jesus on disputable things, keep it between yourself and God. The actual Greek there is shut up. Now, I have 3 thoughts for the Bible nerds, because I'm a Bible nerd, so I have 3 thoughts for us. First, I can read that in Greek, and the word all there is actually all. But Shane, my husband's an idiot. I know him. All. You mean that guy that would gladly die for you if an intruder came in your house tonight? That guy? Let's call it even. All. But Shane, my wife, I know her. I know. You mean that woman that would stand with you if everybody else left? That one? Let's call it even. Oh. But Shane, he said something I disagree with. I know. Oh, so do we give ourselves a pass on no grumbling, no disputing, just because someone says something we disagree with? I mean, if it's that easy to just get around anything we're supposed not to do, then I guess anything goes. Like all things. But Shane, it was about the Bible. Isn't it? I know. Isn't it ironic that some people, in the name of protecting the Bible, will violate the Bible in the name of protecting it? Come on. Oh. Leave the preachers alone, hey? Like seriously. Let me tell you what preaching is. Here's what preaching is. Preaching is spending 12 hours with 4 researchers putting together a talk that's going to take 40 minutes to deliver, only to be potentially eviscerated on the internet by a nameless, faceless coward behind a computer screen who hasn't spent 10 seconds thinking about it. Leave us alone. Oh. Do all things without grumbling or disputing. So first thought for the Bible nerds, all means all. What should be a little bit more with me than that? All means. Yeah. Second thought, Paul is a first century rabbi. He's memorized the entire Bible up to that time, and he's using specific quotes from the Old Testament about this, and he uses very serious language. Watch what he says. Do all things without grumbling or disputing, that you may be blameless and innocent. Really? Is Paul tying our innocence and blamelessness to our basic disposition when we don't get our way? Yeesh. Children of God, without blemish, in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, amongst whom you shine like stars in the world, holding fast to the word of life, so that I may be proud that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. In other words, I'm fixing to die. He's going to get me. But here's the thing. I want to know I didn't waste my life. And one way I'm going to know I didn't waste my life is that you do all things without grumbling or disputing. Now, first thought for the Bible nerds. All means all. Second, Paul is using specific passages from the Old Testament. Let me show them to you. I'm not going to go through them for time's sake, right? But if you're a Bible nerd, you'll study later. If you're not, you're going to forget this part anyway. So I'm just going to put the references up there. Grumbling's a reference to Exodus 16 or Numbers 14. Blameless and pure, Genesis 17. Warped and crooked generation is Deuteronomy 32. That's where Moses says, God's done all this for you, and despite all he's done for you, you're still grumbling. You're no longer children of God. You're a warped and crooked generation, right? Shine like stars is a reference to Daniel 12. Run in vain is a reference to Isaiah 65. Now, if you're wondering, okay, Shane, I'm not a Bible nerd, please, what does all this mean? Let me explain it in one statement. These are specific statements from the Old Testament about the Exodus story. Here's the Exodus story in one statement. There's a group of people that did nothing to earn it, nothing to deserve it, and despite them doing nothing to earn it or deserve it, God reaches out to them because he loves them. He saves their life and moves them from slavery to freedom. And then subsequent to that, the same group of people grumbled about things less important than that. That's the whole story, basically. Does that sound like anybody you know? Can you find yourself in that story anywhere? Do you know anybody that did nothing to earn it, nothing to deserve it, but God saved their life because he loves them? And subsequent to that, they grumbled about things less important than that? Christians of all people should be known if anything else, should be known as the people that, right, wrong, or indifferent, they're the people who don't grumble and they don't argue between themselves. How are we doing with how we're interacting in our world? So let's say it this way, if you got lost at all in that, let's say it this way. Paul is essentially saying, don't be like the freed Israelites and grumble. Rather, there's a better way to live. You can shine like stars. That to be light in our world actually starts out with a decision to do all things without grumbling or disputing. So, first thought for the Bible nerds, all means all. Second thought, this is a lesson from the Exodus story, and it still is applicable to us today. Third thought for the Bible nerds, the word translated grumble from Greek, let me show it to you because it's just such a cool word. I love words. Let me show it to you. The word is gongismon. I love that word. It's such a cool sounding word. Let me say it slower. Let me say it slower. Gongismon. The word translated grumble is a gong. An out-of-place symbol. It's a musical metaphor. Paul used this a lot. If you understand all kinds of stuff, but you have not love, you're like a clanging cymbal. Gongismon. It's this. This is what grumbling is. If you're wondering, well, what counts as grumbling? Let me tell you what grumbling's not. Grumbling is not presenting a problem that you've already cared enough about to brainstorm 5 possible solutions to make something better. That's not grumbling. Grumbling is this. Grumbling is like in music, right? Now I'm not good at music, but I know when it sounds good. And here's the truth about music. You could have the best singer in Detroit here, standing next to the best guitar player in Detroit, standing next to the best keyboard player in Detroit. And it doesn't matter. There is no such thing as a musician that is good enough to overcome a bad drummer. No such thing. There's no such thing. And we've all been in church long enough to have seen that awkward moment where it's just weird. In other words, the greatest musicians on the planet cannot overcome a drummer who is just arbitrarily crashing cymbals out of beat. That's what grumbling is. Because here's the truth. Rochester Christian Church is a song. Your family is a song. Your neighbor is a song. Your business is a song. And you have a choice. You can find your part in the song and play that part. Or you can lose your part in the song and sit the song out. Either way. But what you do not want to do is lose your place in the song, and instead of finding your place in the song, you start crashing cymbals as hard as you can to make the entire song start over. Here's what grumbling is. Grumbling is when we lose our place in the song, and instead of sitting it out or finding our place again, we make as much noise with our mouth as humanly possible in order to make everybody else start over because of our selfishness. That's what grumbling is. Grumbling is when we refuse to be a part of the song and instead we're a gong. Now, if you're the type that only remembers one line from a sermon, here you go. Be a part of the song and never a gong. That's what Paul's charging the Philippians to be and us. Hey, if you don't want to be a part of the song, then at least be thoughtful enough to sit the song out. But whatever you do, don't start making so much noise with your mouth that you make everybody else start over around you. That's what grumbling is. Grumbling is when we gong in the middle of the song. Now, which leads me to this parable. There's an ancient rabbinical parable. Now, this is not in the Bible, but it's a parable rabbis tell about the Bible to help us understand it, right? So it goes like this. That as the children of Israel were crossing the Red Sea, there were walls of water being held back to save their life. And there was one slave who started to notice one piece of mud got between his toes. And he told the person walking next to him, look at this. There's mud between my toes. And that thing got traction. And before they got across the Red Sea, both of them were so focused on the one piece of mud between the toes that they lost sight of the walls of water on both sides being held back for their redemption. Which leads me to this question. Have we ever lost sight of the water at the expense of the mud? Christians of any... If Christians are going to be known for anything, they should be known for, you know what, right, wrong, or indifferent, I'm not sure, but I do know this. Those people exclaim the goodness and the work of their God all over this world. They're pointing out all the water instead of the one or two pieces of mud that aren't going so well. When I hear Christians grumble about the world, I don't even know what to say. When I hear a Christian go, oh, can you believe how bad this world's getting? What are you talking about? Read a history book. It's the best time to ever be alive in the history of the world. Now, is God done redeeming it? No. Is it better? Yes. Look, let me explain what I mean. You don't judge success on a plotted point. You judge success on a trajectory line, considering the whole story. Let me explain. Let me give you a question that you cannot possibly know the answer to. Let me tell you about my money. I have $500,000 in the bank, and I have zero debt. Am I winning or am I losing? The answer is you can't possibly know. Here's why. I've only given you a plotted point. I've only told you one place in time. What if I said, let me tell you the whole story. I inherited $110 million from my rich uncle, and I'm an idiot, and I'm down to my last $500,000. Am I winning or am I losing? I'm losing. But what if I started with nothing and I've just crossed 500,000? Am I winning? So two people can be at the exact same plotted point, and one be winning and one be losing, because you don't judge success on plotted points. You judge success on trajectory lines. And that's true of your life. You don't judge the success of your marriage based on where you are today. You judge the success of your marriage based on where you are today compared to where you were a year ago, right? You don't judge the success of your bank account on today. You judge the success of your bank account on where you were compared to last year. 5 years ago. You don't judge the success of the growth of an individual person based on what you see. You gauge the success of a growth of an individual person based on what you see compared to what they came from. That's what you judge success on. If a complete and total atheist goes from atheism to considering God, that's called a good move, right? You don't judge success on plotted points. You judge success on trajectory lines. And now listen, let me be clear. This is Earth. Are there a couple pieces of mud that aren't going so well? Yeah. Like, if you woke up this morning in Aleppo, that's not good. If you woke up this morning as a female under extremist Islamic rule, that's not good. There's more access to free pornography in an anonymous way on the internet. That's also not good. There's a few pieces of mud that we can choose to focus on, or we can step back and exclaim the goodness and the work of the Spirit of God in our world everywhere. There's water everywhere. Christianity 101 is that we believe the Spirit of God is at work in our world, fixing our world in order to establish the kingdom. That's what it is. And is God doing a good job or not so good job? The answer is He's doing a great job. This world's the best it's ever been. Is God done? No. Is it better? Yes. You don't seem convinced. Okay, I'll convince you. Maybe. Here's some straight facts. Life expectancy. Life expectancy in Jesus' day was 32. By 1550, it had ballooned to 37. By 1850, it was 43. 1925 was the first time in the history of the world we were living to 50, and that was only in the Western world. Global life expectancy did not cross 50 years old until 1948. That's within my father's lifetime. Now we're living into our 80s. Is God done redeeming long life? No. Is it better? Yes. That was underwhelming. Is it better? Yes. Medicine. Medicine's better. That's why we're living longer. Would you rather have dental work today or in 1950? Or 1850? Like today, they can numb your entire mouth with one well-placed shot before they drill in your tooth nerve. That's good. Today, they numb your mouth with Novocaine. In 1850, they numbed your mouth with whiskey. Novocaine is better. Is God done redeeming dental health? No. Is it better? Yes. Would you rather have a colonoscopy today? Or in 1950? Hello. It's just better. Oh, can you believe how bad this world's getting? Or 1850 when they just sort of looked around, you know? Hey, anybody want to go to the public hanging tonight for entertainment? Nobody? Right? Why? Because it's illegal. We don't do that anymore. Anybody want to go to the disembowelment of the village betrayer? No, we don't do that anymore, right? You say, well, hang on, the church is in the best place it's ever been. Hey, 400 years ago, British priests were cutting women's ears off in public to make them less attractive to avoid potential adultery in order to save their soul. This is better. Sir Thomas More was burning people at the stake in the middle of London for, wait, here was their crime, owning their own copy of the Bible without license. And here's why. He said if the uneducated were ever able to pass their opinion on the Bible, it would cause problems. Now, he's right about that. But burning people at the stake is a drastic overreaction. This is just better. Violence is better. The murder rate in Europe in 1400 was 100 murders to 100,000 people. Today, that same murder rate is 1. Literally, the murder rate is 100 times less than it used to be, and people are still going, oh, can you believe how? What are you talking about? According to the World Health Organization, 2014 was the most peaceful year in the history of the world. Less deaths because of violence than any other time in history. And it wasn't even close. You should see the graph on it. The deaths because of war from 1300 all the way to now, the graph just goes. This, 1941, big spike. I'll let you figure that one out. Then it goes quickly down. But the spike in 1941 didn't even get back to 1300 levels. It didn't. And then it just tapers off. And by the time you get to 2014, 15, 16, you can't even see it on the graph compared to 2013. Now, is God done redeeming violence? No. Is it better? Yes. Why? Because there's more democracy. In 1800, there was 2 democracies in the world. Today there's 90. For the first time in the history of the world, the common man has a say in government. Is God done redeeming it? No. Is it better? Yes. Would you rather be a woman today or in 1950? Are you kidding me? Or 1850? Or back in the book of Judges or something? Are you kidding me? Is God done redeeming women's rights? No. Is it better? Yes. Would you rather be a person with black skin today or in 1940? Or 1850 or 1550. Is God done redeeming race relations? No. Is it getting better? Sure, yes. The trajectory's going the right direction. God's still got a long way to go, but he's faithful to finish what he completed, right? But it's going good. And we should be the people going, look at the water here. Look at the water here. Look at the water here. Money. According to the World Health Organization, 92% of the world was living in poverty in 1820. By today's definition of poverty. Today that number is 15%. And by some estimations, by 2025 it's going to be below 10% for the first time in the history of the world. Is God done redeeming it? No. Is it better? Yes. According to Forbes magazine, the person turning 21 today has more money in the bank than the previous 4 generations before him combined at the same age. And yet that's not hard to figure out. All you got to do is talk to them. Talk to a 20-year-old. Hey, what are you up to? You know what I'm thinking about doing? I'm thinking about taking 3 months off and going and walking around Europe. Who's got that kind of money? Evidently they do. I'm 42. We didn't think about that. My parents, definitely not. My grandparents wouldn't have known where to get a passport. It's just better. Could you imagine? Can you imagine if your great-great-grandfather came back from the dead and lived with you for 2 days, and your mission was to convince him the world is worse? Can you imagine that? Hey, great-great-granddad, good to see you, man. We got 2 days. You're not going to believe how much harder the world is today than what you lived. You just wouldn't understand. Could you imagine that? Can you just imagine the things in your house that you'd have to explain? Hey, what's that? That's a car. What's that do? Takes us wherever we want to go. 70 miles an hour on a paved road. What? What's that? That's a tap. What's that do? It brings clean, drinkable water into our house under pressure. What's that? That's the hot water. You can have hot water in your house? Yes. What's that? That's toilet paper. It's awesome. It is awesome. We would urge you to use it. We saw you collecting tree bark. No need. Toilet paper works. And this is true. This is true. Japan got tired of too much paper in their sewer system, and so they've done away with toilet paper. They invented a toilet that pressure washes your butt when you're done. It is unbelievable. My friend in Australia has one. Honestly, you get done, you hit the button, it goes this way, that way, this way, and then it dries you. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I used the toilet in Detroit and I was like, are we in a third world country or something? Right? It's amazing. You just push the button. You got to be careful because it feels freaky at first. But man, then it's like, this is awesome. It's just awesome. Money. Like, listen. We have so much extra money now. Extra money. We have so much excess and extra money that there is somebody in Rochester, Michigan this week making a full-time wage massaging people. That's a relatively new privilege. That we have so much money, we can pay someone $60 an hour to rub our shoulders because they feel tight. Our grandparents didn't have that. Like, there's somebody, hey, there's somebody in Rochester, Michigan this week making a full-time wage, ready? Permanently removing women's facial hair. My great-grandmother didn't have that. You should have seen him. It was unbelievable, right? Now, is God done redeeming these things? No. Is it better than it's ever been? Yes. If you think the world's getting worse, here's all I want to know. Name one thing that's worse today than 400 years ago. You can't. You can't. Now, there's always this one guy, you know, there's always that one guy that's going to point out the one thing you said, right? And so I was talking about this one time, this guy, to be fair to him, he was trying to be funny. He wasn't being mean. He was trying to be funny. He's just not funny. And when someone's trying to be funny and they're not funny, it's awkward. But he's like, hey, Shane. Hey, Shane. Just like this, too. Hey, Shane. Hey, Shane. You say the world's getting better. Well, if the world's getting better, how come the divorce rate's going up? How come the divorce rate's going up? Okay, let's talk about that. Okay. The divorce rate is in fact going up. Actually, in the last 15 years, it started to go down, but that's just because less people are getting married. So the truth of it is that divorce rates are going up, marriage rates are going down. That is a piece of mud. That's not good. It is. Let's call that what it is. Divorce rates going up, marriage rates going down, not good. But why is that? Why is the divorce rate going up? Let's just be real about it. Why is the divorce rate going up? It's because we're living longer. Duh. When you died at 32, till death do us part was more doable. Now, marriages have to last 50 years longer than people even lived in Jesus' day. You got to look at that person and say, I'm stuck with you to 84? No way! That's like saying the world's worse because we have more skin cancer. Of course we do. We're living 50 years longer for our skin to do jacked up stuff. It's just better. It's just better. Are there a couple pieces of mud? Sure. But Christians should be the people pointing out the water, not the mud. Which leads me to this. Why do we grumble? Let's talk about that. Because I think if we can understand why, we can get over it. Well, one, I think we grumble when we forget to remember. We forget to remember our nation is in fact awesome. Can you find a couple pieces of mud in America? Sure, sure. Is it worth grumbling about? No, our nation's awesome. I travel the world. When I come back from a worldwide trip and I hear Americans complaining about America, what's wrong with you? Let me be blunt. If you can't make it here, bro, where you gonna go? Like, where you gonna go? We live in a nation with motor cars, paved road stores that prepackaged food for us, clean water in our tap, machines that do washing, other machines that do drying, world-class healthcare right down the road, laws that protect the weak against the strong, and we have a democracy where you get to vote to have your say. That's awesome. Yes. It's a bit underwhelming from a room full of Americans. The Australians really beat you on that one. They did. I talked about how good Australia was. They're like, Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Oi, oi. Right, yeah. See, even you, right? Aussie, Aussie, Aussie. Americans going, oi, oi, oi. Our life is great. Let's just be honest. If God never did one more thing for any of us, is it, for most of us, our life is really good. For the most part. Our health's a gift. Hey, I woke up this morning without a chemotherapy appointment. That's awesome. That's awesome. And you know what? I mean, 2 weeks ago, they used that C word in my general direction, and they had to check me. And it all was good. And the fear you get when you hear that word, and then they go, don't panic, we just have to go look and make sure it's not that. I'm like, well, and then they looked, and it was good. Man, that's a gift. That changes things. That changes things. Our transportation. I fly every week, and you know what? Every week in an airport, I hear people grumble over 20-minute flight delays. 20-minute flight delays. You imagine your great-great-grandfather, he'd be like, it took me 6 months to get there on a boat, and I just hope we didn't all die of scurvy on the way there. And you're fixing to get into the most technologically advanced piece of machinery ever invented in the history of the world for travel. It's going to fly you at 36,000 feet, 600 miles an hour, wherever you want to go while digitally streaming movies. You can fly from Detroit to Amsterdam in 9 hours while digitally streaming on-demand entertainment content, and at the push of a button, someone brings you a free Coca-Cola, and you still complain? What is wrong with you? And by the way, in case you're interested, I am. Richard Branson has invented a plane that can go Sydney to Dallas in an hour. How awesome's that? And here's the thing. I'm in. I'm not on the first one. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to be on the maiden voyage. But once they do that about 1,000 times, I'm in. And here's the thing. It doesn't fly faster. It flies higher. Because the world is round, if you fly at 96,000 feet instead of 36,000 feet, your relative ground speed is 10,680 miles an hour. You can go anywhere in the world in an hour. The trick is coming down from that height without people's heads blowing off. But They'll work it out. It's going to be awesome. Our homes, if you live in an average home in Rochester, Michigan, you live in like kings used to. Our medicines, think about that. Think about if your life was relegated to medical technology just from 50 years ago. How many of us would be dead? I mean, it's just unbelievable. Power, literacy rate in Jesus' day, 3%. It's just better now. It's just better. Let's say it this way. I think we grumble when we forget to remember the story's larger. We focus on one piece of mud when there's water everywhere. The redemptive story of God in the world is bigger than the 20 years you remember. It's bigger than the 40 years we remember. It's even bigger than the 60 years of our lifetime. Like, it's real easy to take a small sample size and go, well, compared to that, it's worth. But hang on, no. The story of the world is bigger than our 20-year, 30-year, 40-year, 50-year, 60-year blip. We got to consider the whole thing. The whole thing's going really, really well. Really well. Let's say it this way. We grumble when we think we need more. Or we compare ourselves to what others have. This is what happens when we look right and left instead of in and up to get our value. We compare ourselves and then we grumble. Because in America, if you look right and left to get your value, there's nowhere to look except for richer people. And so what happens is the middle class look at the richer people and go, what? And here's what's happening. Is the richest 5% of people in the whole world on a worldwide scale end up arguing and splitting hairs over how that gets divided. We look silly. We just look silly. In South Africa, when we make the news for stuff like this, we look silly. We look, in China, we look dumb. It's like, wait a minute, let's say it this way. The idea that I'll have peace and contentment at some unknown point in the future, that's just a lie. The idea that if I don't currently have that car, but if I got it, I'd feel better. That's just a lie. I don't currently have that, but if I had a bigger home, I'd feel better. No, you wouldn't. Like, if I just lost this weight, I'd feel better. No, you won't. No, you won't. Let me be clear. If you need to lose weight, please do. There's a lot of good benefits to being at an ideal weight for your height. There is. It's a good thing. Losing 30 pounds, if you need to lose 30 pounds, is a good thing to do. But if you're not enough without it, you'll never be enough with it. You'll just be a 30-pound lighter version of your discontented self. It doesn't work that way. Like, if I just met this person, I'd be better if I could just meet somebody. No, you wouldn't. No, you wouldn't. Why? Because there's no such thing as a happy marriage that was forged between two miserable single people. It doesn't work, right? Like, oh man, we hated our lives and then we got married and it fixed it. No, it doesn't. Marriage doesn't fix problems. Marriage magnifies problems, right? Or that raise, if I just had more money. No, you wouldn't. This is straight science. If you make $60,000 a year as a family, more money is not more happiness. Now, when I hear people say money doesn't buy happiness, that's not altogether true. If you make $30,000 a year as a family and you get a raise to $60,000, you are happier. That's absolutely, and there's science to back that up. But from 60,000 to 60 million, no more reported happiness. More money is a good thing to have, but if you're not enough without it, you're not going to be enough with it. Money doesn't make you what you are; it just makes you more of that. So if you're discontented here, more of it's just going to be more. It's just there's never enough. Let's say it this way: we grumble when we feel God has shorted us. Now this is really important, and I want to make sure this doesn't just land like a cliche. God has been good to me, right? Like, if we don't live with that conviction, and that could sound like a Pentecostal or a church cliche, like, God is good all the time, right? Like, wait a minute, hold on. And amen, He is. God's good, right? But you realize if that becomes too familiar, it loses its weight, right? And so we get flippant with thoughts like that. But what if we weren't flippant? What if we actually stopped and meditated for a second and went, wait a minute. God's been really good. I was born in America, not South Sudan. I just had a kid that was born in Detroit, not Aleppo. Hold on a second. It wasn't anything that was going to hurt my health. It was something that the doctor could easily fix while under sedation, which was better. Hold on, God, wait a minute. God's been really good. Because if we don't settle that, then any little piece of mud will grumble about it. But the whole story is God's been good. God has been good. Let's say it this way: I think we grumble when we judge the future by the present. The philosophical word for this is despair. Despair is the internal conviction that my tomorrow is simply a repeat of yesterday. Resurrection doesn't allow that. Resurrection as a doctrine on a pamphlet does, but resurrection as a fundamental way of seeing the world, that doesn't allow that. Resurrection says if you were wrong about death, what else could you be wrong about? You never know what God might do tomorrow to just change the trajectory of everything. You never know. The psychological word for this is to freeze the present. The idea that the pain I'm feeling today will never leave me. And that's just not true. Heck, but it's in us to do that. Let's be honest. Even if we get a bad enough cold, 4 days into a bad cold, we're thinking, I'll never breathe again. That's me done, right? Or breakups, heartbreak, right? Remember your first breakup? Remember that? Remember the pain of it? Remember that? I remember mine. I remember the first girl that broke up with me. I do. And it was mutual. And don't you think nothing less, right? Like, we talked about it. It wasn't working. We broke up, right? But thing is, I was tore up about it. And she was okay. It was weird, right? Even though it was mutual, right? So, and they call it heartbreak, but you don't feel it in your heart. You feel it in your splachna, or you feel it here, right? So it's like, oh. And I was all pouting. I was at school pouting about it, which is always attractive, you know? And I was like, oh, God, I love her so much. This hurts so bad. I'll never find anybody. I was 14. It was just a disaster. My dad picks me up from school, you know. I get in the car and I'm pouting. My dad says, hey, what's the matter with you? Now, if you've ever parented a teenager, you know what I said. I said, nothing. My dad said, really? Nothing? Then tell your face that. Because here's the thing. Here's the thing. I can't see into your heart, but I can see your face. And if your face is any indication of what's actually going on in your heart, then there's a problem. So if there's really not a problem, then your face is broken. So fix your flippin' face. Gosh. I get home. I'm still pouting. Dad waits about an hour. He's had enough, you know. He comes in my room. He says, hey! You gonna tell me or not? I was like, Dad, she broke up with me. It was mutual. This hurts so bad. My dad looked at me right in the eye and he said, boy, are you crying over a girl? I said, yeah, Dad, it hurts. Oh, I love her so much. He said, hang on, I'll be right back. He comes back with the smallest potted plant. Like I could hold it like this. Little sprig, you know. He says, an object lesson, you got to learn it now. He said, hold the potted plant. And I'm thinking, new life, small beginnings, hope, or, right, whatever. I didn't know what he was going to do. He said, here's the object lesson. The lesson is, if you're going to cry over a girl, at least cry in the plant so your tears will do something. God, you're embarrassing. And you know he was right. 3 weeks later, new girl, forget her, right? You don't freeze the present. We grumble. Why do we grumble? We forget to remember. We only consider one plotted point instead of the whole thing. We look right and left and we compare. We don't settle that God's been good to me and we freeze the present. I think that there's one more reason I think we grumble, and that is this. We grumble when we forget life is a marathon and not a sprint. This is a quote from the great Franciscan monk Richard Rohr. We tend to overestimate what we can do in 1 year, but underestimate what we can do in 10. Like we grumble when we feel like a failure, but it's not failing. It was just overestimating what was possible. But it's underestimating what's possible. We stuck to it for 10. Why do we grumble? Well, we don't remember. We don't consider the whole story. We consider one plotted point. We compare. We don't sort out that God's been good. Or we freeze the present. Or we forget that life's a marathon, not a sprint. Now, if you're the type of person who listens to the first 3 minutes of a message, right? And then you phase out. And then when you feel the message winding down, you come back? Like if that's you, like now's your time. This is your moment. And if you're thinking, oh no, she's going to ask me in the car what he said, and I don't have a clue. If that's you, let me save your life. Or afternoon. It's slightly overstated, the first one. Here's the entire message in one statement. No grumbling. Shine like stars. When we do all things without grumbling or disputing, that is what it means to be light in our world. We need to repent from where we've grumbled or disputed, or where we've given some YouTube blogger an extra view when he's doing nothing but disputing. It's not compelling. It's boring. There's a whole lot better way to live in our world, and that is do all things. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. How? All things without grumbling or disputing. Now, great sermons are not meant to be agreed with. So if your only thought is, I love that, I agree with him. Okay, you've sort of missed the point. If your only thought is, I hated that, I disagree with you, you also have missed the point. Plus, I would love to know your case for why we need more grumbling. But nonetheless, great sermons are meant to be wrestled with. So let's wrestle. Is shining as simple as not grumbling? Maybe we've made it too complicated. Or shining is as simple as keep going. There's something, think about the people who inspire you the most. They're not the people not going through things. They're the people who have great faith in the middle of stuff. There's nothing inspiring about somebody not going through anything. If I said, hey, I brought my friend Bill. Bill's going to give you his testimony. Bill, tell him. And Bill went, hello, everybody. My name's Bill. Let me tell you about my life. It's awesome. My marriage is awesome. My children are awesome. My business is booming. And when I think about my past, you know what? Gotta be honest, I pretty much nailed that too. Right? We don't want to know him. You don't know that guy. The most inspirational people you know are the people who go through things and keep their head up, their shoulders back, their hands clean, their heart pure, their taste sweet, and they go forward. Yes. That's what faith is. Is shining as simple as knowing we have enough right now? There's something inspiring about somebody who is internally content with their stuff. Or maybe the best way to ask it is this. Do we need to repent from grumbling? I do. And how seriously are we going to take this? The church is notorious for focusing on sins that only affect 1% of people, and they preach to the choir because they're not dealing with that. But hang on. Did we rationalize that it was okay to grumble or dispute this week? And that's not okay. Maybe we need to repent from that. I do. I can tell you, I grumbled. I grumbled Friday. I don't mind telling you. I can tell you even what, and you'll understand. I was on Squirrel Road, turning right on Walton, right? And whoever thought that up, whoever designed that road thought no one would ever show up, right? They thought, oh, no one's going to come here. That'll be fine, right? And I was coming this way thinking, I was grumbling to myself with no one else to listen to me, which is an entirely different set of psychological problem. And then it hit me. Hang on. I'm preaching this. And here was my situation. You ready? I was driving in a motor car on a semi-paved road. I was driving in a motor car on a sort of paved road, driving to a restaurant where someone's going to cook me food to have lunch with my friend who celebrates me, and I celebrate him, and there's no strife between us, and we can both easily afford that. And I was still finding something to grumble about. That's not shining. That's dumb. You got to repent from these things. I need to repent from these things. We need to be shining stars. Which leads me to this. I wonder if Paul would have had the internet, how this would have been different. If Paul would have had the internet, would Philippians have looked different? And I think yes. So, what if Paul would have had YouTube? So, somebody sent me a video. And I archived it because it was really inspirational. And I thought, you know what, this is a perfect time to show it. Let me set it up, about 45 seconds to set up, and then I'm going to play it. It's a 50-second video. It's a little girl, 2 years old or so, very, very ill. She's been in the hospital 344 consecutive days in a row, which means her mother has been in the hospital 344 consecutive days in a row. She's got prednisone puff. You know, when you take too much prednisone, it puffs you up. She's got tubes in her nose. Turns out she's got leukemia, and she's waiting on a bone marrow transplant to save her life. If anybody had a right to complain about their lot in life, it's this little girl or the mother. But they don't. They sing you a song. And so I want to show this to you in a second. And I want to explain two things to you. First, if you watch the video, the mother's a champion. The child, the song moves a bit fast for the child, so the child keeps looking off camera, and the mother showing her emotions. I mean, it just is awesome. And at the 23-second mark, she's going to say something that sounds like baby garble, but it's not baby garble. Here's what she says. She says, this is going to be really, no, this is really awesome. This is really awesome. And so I want to back up for a second. And I think if Paul would have had YouTube, he would have said, if you want to know what Shining Like Stars is, it's this little girl. Let me back up and let this girl sing you a 50-second song. Check this out.
Let me hear it. Let me hear it.
Really awesome. You're storming here right now. You might be down for a moment. Feel like it's hoping actually reminds you. Come in. Glory, come in. Down, hit the bottom, hit the ground. Oh, now, no. Just hit the ground, don't forget, hang on to his promises. He wants you to know you're
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the last thing we were going to grumble about? Shine like stars. So, my brothers and sisters of Rochester, may you not just be people who are on your way to heaven, or people endeavoring to get all the right ideas in your head. May you live in awe despite not figuring it all out. May you be people who are more concerned with how you believe what you believe instead of just simply what you believe. May your belief system translate into how you interact with your world. Thank you so much for letting me be part of your Sunday. I hope you really enjoyed that. Until I see you next time, shine like stars, everybody. God bless.